What's up, everybody? This is the 2023 Hyundai IONIQ 6. So about the 6, it's the all-new sedan here from Hyundai, all electric of course, and it uses a lot of components from the IONIQ 5, but then of course puts it in this very sleek sedan body. And so, compared to the IONIQ 5, it's 4 inches lower and 8.5 inches longer. It is actually closer to the length of the Sonata for reference, and they of course focus on a very low drag coefficient. This one has a drag coefficient of 0.22, and so that means it helps to maximize the amount of range you get out of this thing. Up front there, I still think that black strip is a little out of place, and I just wish that was body color, but otherwise I think it looks really nice up front there. Really cool with the curvature you have with the hood and all those little pixel lights. There's over 700 of those pixels here on the outside in various places, and so it's just a really cool looking combination with those dual projector LED headlamps. You also have those active air shutters there in the front that open and close too to help cool off the battery and maximize the range and efficiency. And coming down to the sides here, this one has the 20-inch wheels, which do hurt your range a good bit, and you get much better range figures with the 18-inch wheels, which are available on the lower trims. But here on this Limited we're looking at here, they all come with the 20s, and they're a really nice wheel, but honestly the 18-inch wheels also look really nice too, and don't really seem to be much of a downgrade either. So if you're okay with a little less of the creature comforts that you lose out on by going down from the Limited, those lower trims still look really nice. Also on the sides, there's a lot of very interesting cues here. You'll see first off, you have this body color portion, then you have the black portion below it there. It will be gray on some colors depending on the color, of the vehicle, but it's designed to reduce the visual mass on the sides there, which is a cool touch. It's also a really interesting look, just like the way the C-pillar kind of floats down there into the trunk lid. It's really impressive with that drop off there, and even the window line kind of sinks down there. Overall, just a really unique look in my opinion. It's actually 2 inches shorter for the wheelbase compared to the IONIQ 5. So you have a shorter wheelbase but a longer vehicle overall, which is an interesting change. And then going out to the back there, you'll see what I think is a Porsche inspired back end there. It's very unique though with the way you have that large rear spoiler right on top there. They say that helps with aerodynamics and downforce, so it's a win-win. It's a really cool and distinctive look as well, and it's something that no one else has really done outside of the 911. And I'd say this is also pretty unique in its own way though, with the way it has the 2 levels of pixel LED lights there, and certainly does look unique compared to the 911, but just all that extra complexity really gives you a lot to look at and a lot to focus on there on the back end. Lower part of the rear bumper, you can see you have those vertical strakes and then some reflectors. It's a lot to take in, but I really just love the back end. Honestly, I think it's my favorite angle of the vehicle. Is that back end is just so interesting, and even the lighting you have there on top of the spoiler there at night whenever you hit the brake pedal, it's just really cool with that third brake light. The whole thing illuminates with a bunch of pixels again. It's just so cool the way they designed this thing, and so especially not only at night but also in the day, it just looks really good and really stands out. And moving on to the interior here in the IONIQ 6, it is very cool, very unique, lots of interesting textures and colors and materials. It's just all very impressive and lots to take in as well, but especially at night, that's where it really wows you I think the most, because you have this 64 color ambient lighting and it's dual colors, so you can have the top and the bottom be different colors, and it bathes this whole interior, these unique doors and the center console. Everything is just like really nicely bathed in light and looks really cool. But other things here in the IONIQ 6. So first thing, sitting down in these seats, you have these nice and soft, comfortable seats here. This one being the Limited here, you have these leather seats that are perforated. They're heated and cooled here, but the cooling is only here in the Limited trim. But as far as the comfort, I've been driving around in these seats all day and they are super comfortable. This would be a great road trip vehicle with the way these seats have this great comfort. The steering wheel is also really nice here in the IONIQ 6. So a very unique design here. They said they have the 9.3 grip up a little bit higher so you can see the gear selector here, which is this extra stock that comes out. So that's why they did that. But it's really nice with the drive mode selector here on the wheel. Just all your usual buttons you're used to from any other Hyundai product. You have the paddle shifters here on the back of the wheel for the regen, and just a really nicely shaped wheel. And I also love you have these 4 little lights here on the airbag cover here, and those will actually illuminate either when the vehicle is charging, or also if you're doing voice commands, that'll kind of give you a visual cue that it is understanding your voice commands. And so really cool, you have that extra little bit there on the wheel. And moving on to the gauges here, so you have a 12.3 inch display here for the gauges. All of these screens, by the way, are standard regardless of which model you get, so there's no screen downgrade going to any lower trim. And so anyway, really nice gauges here. Now that white background is optional. You can't have a black background as well if you don't want the bright white, but they're really nice, and the design either way is really great. Now it does have some customization when you go into the different drive modes. They'll have different looks, but otherwise in the middle there. You can change a few things, but it's not quite as customizable as I personally would like it to be. And even some Kias have different themes there for that, and this doesn't have quite as much of that, but still really great. I love that they include the percentage of the battery as well as just the range estimate. A lot of other electric vehicles these days will just tell you the range, but they won't tell you how much actual battery capacity you have left. I love that this has the percentage. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, you have another 12.3-inch display here for your touchscreen infotainment system, and it's really well set up. Again, very familiar if you're used to any other Hyundai and Kia stuff over the past few years. All very similar here. And you have the exclusive EV mode page here to dial in all your charge settings and also look for charging stations. And doing everything else in this screen is nice and easy for the most part. Now, it is still, some things take a few extra steps. So for example, there is no heated or cooled seat buttons. There is a shortcut button here lower on the dash, but that just brings you to the screen where you then have to control that. So it is unfortunate, like you have to do, 2 taps here to turn on your heated or cooled seats. Same thing for the steering wheel. But, other than those, minor things, it's still really good. The only other minor complaint I have with this screen is it does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but it is not wireless Apple CarPlay or wireless Android Auto. So you're still going to plug your phone in every time you want to use it. Not ideal, and most of the other competitors these days do have the wireless integration, but, it's not a huge deal to have to plug in your phone each time, and there are aftermarket workarounds as well. If you do want to really have wireless in this, you can supposedly do that with an aftermarket little hookup. But otherwise, though, radio station tuning, all that kind of stuff is nice and easy to do, and just a really well done system there. The navigation system now also does do route planning and intelligent route planning, where it can get real-time data from the charging stations to give you an accurate, amount of information as far as what's available and all that. And so great that they have all that baked into there as well. And I also really like this enclosure you have for that area. It's just a little bit different from the IONIQ 5. And you also have, like I said, the volume and tune knob and these other little controls down here, which are pretty good. But I will say these silver buttons, whenever the sun's shining on them, it's kind of hard to see the writing. But aside from that, nice to have some hard buttons, and they are, Hyundai says they're one of the ones they're keeping buttons around. They're not going to go to all screens for everything. And I think, a lot of people are appreciating that. So really great you have some buttons there. Beneath that, you'll have this interesting tunnel area. So you can see on the top part of it here, you have a wireless charging pad, USB jack, cup holders, and this is also where you'll see your window switches, because this door panel, aside from the memory seat buttons here, there are no buttons here on this door, and it's really a cool look though. But as a result, you have that here in the center. But this whole center area they also designed, so if you want to put a laptop on here or something like that, a tablet, you can put that here because it's a level surface and none of the buttons come up above the console here. So that's great. And the materials here are really interesting. I usually don't talk about materials much in these interior reviews, but it's really cool. So I will say this stuff is all pretty hard, and usually that's something I'm not in love with, but in this, the textures are so interesting. They feel very premium for both this lighter material and also the darker stuff here. It has an interesting texture, almost like stone here for this middle portion. And a lot of this interior materials are made out of recycled and sustainable materials as well, which is cool. But just, it all feels premium, even though it's not super plush. And so, sure, I would like to see some extra padding here down by your knees, but still, just a really cool amount of materials here. And I just like the choices they made here with these. As far as the actual color of the interior, by the way, there's this gray, there's a black, and also you can get set up so you have a dark green dashboard and steering wheel, which would be my pick for sure. And very cool. They're, being a little daring with offering that color option as well. But I'd love to see even more color options like we see in Genesis products, for example. But anyway, other things here, you have a good amount of storage space here for a sedan especially. Huge pockets in the doors here, lots of extra space, with the way the door's designed. And then in the middle here, you also, beneath all the stuff on the top here, you have this whole tray under here that also has a power outlet back there. But an enormous amount of space there. You also do have this little area right behind your window switches and this center armrest, which is nice and softly padded. You open that up and you'll see 2 more USB-C jacks and a good amount of space there. But moving on to the backseat space here in the IONIQ 6, it is really good. So I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself. I easily have probably 9 inches of legroom to spare. It is huge. And just for reference, it's 4 more inches of rear legroom than a Tesla Model 3, which is already very impressive with its backseat. 4 more inches here with this. So, really a top-notch back seat and very impressive for the size of this vehicle. And some other nice things you'll see, they have their own air vents there and more USB jacks. There's also a plug here right underneath the back seat as well, and so that is a normal 120 volts, and you can use that to power all kinds of stuff in this vehicle. There's also, fold down center armrest, pockets in those doors, and headroom back there isn't huge. Again, me being 5'9", I got a couple of of inches of headroom to spare there, but not a ton. Trunk space here in the IONIQ 6 is also, you know, pretty decent. I think it's about 11 cubic feet of space. It's, I'd say, smaller than a Sonata for sure. You know, smaller than most average sedans, midsize sedans at least. And it's not very deep. And beneath the floor there, you have space for like your charging cable. That's about it. So not a lot of space here. But clearly, again, if you're going for this sedan, chances are you don't need a ton of practicality. If you do, you're better off going for the IONIQ 5 anyway. And you also see up front there, you do have a frunk. Kind of, it's like a half a cubic feet of space there, but it's very, very small. You can fit probably, again, like the charging cable, and that's about it up front there. But let's start up and go for a drive. The IONIQ 6 here appears to have a new Hyundai key we haven't seen yet. So it's really nice, you know, silver. This one's a little beat up, but you have some buttons there on the sides. And on the back here, you have some like frosted, like, you know, bluish kind of coloring here on these buttons. A really nice look and a really cool key. It's a little bit on the large side, but it's not too thick. It's just, you know, kind of long, but a really cool key. And so happy to see there's a new key here. But of course it is keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start. So just leave the key in your pocket, hit the EV start button, and it turns right on. All right, so setting off here in the IONIQ 6. So I'm driving along here with Kirk Kreifels. Thanks for joining along with us, Kirk. Here.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, I'm happy to be in another electrified vehicle with you once again.
Yeah, we had a great time on the Prius drive last year, and happy to be back with you again. So it's a rainy day in Arizona, which is a sentence I wasn't expecting to ever say, but you know, we have you know, a nice drive here. We've been driving already a good bit of the day today, and but setting off in the IONIQ 6, one of the first things you'll notice about it is that you know, it does feel very similar to the IONIQ 5. If you're used to those at all, it's very similar and does feel like you're kind of just driving a lower IONIQ 5. Like Cliff Notes, like there's not a whole lot of surprises here.
Right.
You know, that's kind of the bottom line. You have the same motors, same battery pack, you know, a lot of the same kind of controls, and you know, like you have throttle response, braking, all that kind of feels basically the same.
Yeah.
You know, so, and that's a good thing, because I think the IONIQ 5, we were both really impressed with it. And, you know, so in this case, copy and pasting in some areas is actually a really good thing. You have the super fast charging like you get with the IONIQ 5, of course, all these being on the eGMP platform. Then as far as the unique things for the 6 here, so visibility is, you know, obviously not quite as airy as it is in the IONIQ 5, but you still have a nice large windshield, good view out of the sides. View out of the back, I'd say, is actually better than the average sedan. A nice large,
might be better than the EV6, if I remember right, too.
Yeah.
Might be.
Yeah, and I mean, it's also nice. I guess now they're going to probably fix the thing with the IONIQ 5 not having the rear wiper, but with this, I'm not seeing the rear window get super dirty like the IONIQ 5 had.
Nope.
But, so yeah, really easy to drive, though. One of the really nice things is you have the option of the regen paddle, so you can have either a one pedal mode, or you can have, you know, as much or as little regen as you want. It's really nice that it does offer you that, you know, flexibility, and it's also fun, you know, if you live in a hilly area, ramping up the regen whenever you want to have more, and then, you know, back off whenever you want to just coast around if you're used to gas vehicles and how they kind of, you know, coast. And so yeah, it's just a nice thing to drive here so far. It's also pretty nice and quiet. You know, we were talking earlier in Kirk's video about how the ride quality seems to be definitely a little stiffer than the 5, which we were both expecting. You know, this is, you know, as a sedan in general, I feel like sedans typically have a slightly sportier buyer in some cases, at least for the smaller sedans. And so, you know, I think that the stiffer ride is appropriate, but I wouldn't even really call it stiff. Like, I'd call it like maybe firm and sporty, I guess.
It's firm.
A little bit.
You feel you feel the road.
Yeah.
It's the best. It doesn't feel harsh or anything.
Yeah.
And it does. We went over some big speed bumps earlier, and it handled it really well. The suspension sorted it out.
Yeah.
It's just it's not like a luxury car, smooth, buttery smooth, or anything like that. Like,
yeah.
It's quiet in here, but it doesn't feel like I said, a luxury car.
Yeah. Which I think is okay. You know, I mean, yes, this is getting up to electric car prices, but you know, that's what the GV60 is for, and and the G80 electrified and stuff for those who do want, you know, that extra. So I think they did a nice blend here of, you know, how they set it up. And as far as other suspension stuff goes, you have a multi-link suspension in the rear there. One notable difference between this and the 5 is that the wheelbase is 2 inches shorter, even though this vehicle overall is, I think, 8.5 inches longer than the 5. And so that will change the character a little bit, unfortunately, with these rainy roads. You know, we don't have a ton of opportunities to really push this safely a whole lot, but, you know, I think that could potentially make this even a little more tail happy than the 5, which I was able to get the 5 to step out on me, you know, on corner exit at home. And so, I'm excited to be able to push this a little bit more in the future. But with this all-wheel drive version, you do have, you know, the usual dynamic torque split. It gets a little sportier in the sport mode. It'll go 50-50 in snow mode, and then you have, you know, it'll actually default to two-wheel drive if you're going for the eco mode, or if you're, you know, taking it easy in normal mode. So they do have a
that motor.
way.
Yeah, that motor disconnect was impressive when they were talking about. From two different advances. Motor disconnect on the front, it's about 5 or 6% energy efficiency improvement, and then silicon carbide semiconductors also helped out 5 to 6% as well. So the efficiency on this thing is right at the top of the class.
And it's impressive that it's, you know, it means that you don't have to take quite the penalty for all-wheel drive like you do with some other vehicles, where the range drops so much more when you go for an all-wheel drive one. This, it's like, this is 270, and the rear-wheel drive version for this trim, I believe, is 305. So, you know, you lose out on, you know, 30 or 35 miles or whatever, but it's not huge, you know. And so, you know, I don't know, I'm pretty impressed with that. Like you said, with the disconnect and stuff, it's just nice. You can kind of have your cake and eat it too in some ways.
For sure. Yeah, especially if you get in like the smaller wheels. The all-wheel drive with the smaller 18-inch wheels, and you have a little bit of everything. You'll have a softer ride as well. Yeah. You'll have the acceleration if you want that all-wheel drive. Get a cheaper price point too. Yeah. The only thing, like, I guess looks maybe, but you know, we talked about earlier, the 18s still look pretty decent. Yeah. You know, wheel designs are strong still.
I think just the problem is if you want the 18s, you got to go to the lower trims. You can't get that on the Limited here.
Right. No bows, no ventilated seats,
and even no heated steering wheel. That's only on the Limited too. So like I wish that they maybe, I don't know, I don't think they have any option packages to upgrade.
I didn't see any when I was in the builder, but I didn't.
But that would be great to see, is like see an SEL with a premium package, or see something to give you the capability of most of those niceties that you might be expecting from a $50,000 car.
It's true.
But still give you the 18-inch wheels. I mean, obviously, you know, you're not bound by what the manufacturer offers as far as wheels go. That's the easy thing, is it's much easier to change wheels than add heated seats or whatever, you know, so like...
Yeah, you'd have to put like a seat cover on and make it ugly. And
so, you know, I think it's fine, you know, get a Limited and go down to some smaller wheels, and you'll probably, who knows what your rated range will be, but it should be better, you know? And like I said, I think this has the potential to even overperform as well.
I think so. If the conditions are right, I think this thing could get close to maybe 400 miles. I don't want to, I think you could hypermile it close to 400.
Yeah, because I mean, that the long range rear-wheel drive, with the 18-inch wheels, 361 miles of range is what they're quoted. That's the top range ratings for these, and that's also partially thanks to the good aerodynamics you get on all of these. But
and the IONIQ 5 and EV6 typically overperform the ratings as well. So I mean, it's impressive for such a small battery, right? 77.
But seriously, that's not enormous, you know, these days with everything else out there. And so I think it's pretty well done job as far as that goes, and also the fact that it's not even that big of a deal when you have to recharge because of the 800 volt thing.
18 minutes.
Which again, if you're road tripping, like get a Hyundai or a Kia, or I guess a Tesla. But it's like those three, unless you can spend Porsche money and Audi money. Otherwise, you know, this is it. Like, it beats everything else just on that recharge. In 18 minutes from 10% to 80%, like game over. You know?
That's one of the strongest advantages for the GMP platform. Like, Hyundai was smart from the get-go to go straight to 800 volts, and then they can work on the rest after that. And we're already seeing in this, just 1 year later after IONIQ 5, they've made some improvements with efficiency already. So it's crazy.
But other things here, so steering is nice and a little bit heavier, I think, compared to the 5. That is one thing that I can say is different as far as tuning goes. But I'm going to go ahead and put it up into the sport mode here. Let's turn down onto this back road and see how the IONIQ 6 does. We got some wet roads here, but here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right. Gets up and goes pretty nicely here. So with the Limited all-wheel drive version here, we have 320 horsepower, 446 pound-feet of torque, a 5.1 second 0 to 60, and so I mean it's punchy. If you go to the rear-wheel drive versions, there's two different setups, but the mid-grade one that most people will get for rear-wheel drive is going to have 225 horsepower, I believe, and 258 pound-feet of torque, and that's like a 7.4 second 0 to 60. So big downgrade in the power there. Still average performance for, you know, commuter vehicles and stuff, but this one is properly quick. And especially in sport mode, it really ramps up quickly with the power here. So what do you think of the power, Kirk? Is it impressive even in the passenger seat here?
Yeah, like here's the thing with EVs. Yes, it only has like what 310, 320 horsepower, something like that. It's so much more impressive in electrification than it is in a gasoline engine. To get 300 horsepower in a gasoline, especially naturally aspirated engine, you're waiting for the revs to build, and there's never that instant where you're just shoved in the back of your seat. Like the immense amount of torque instantly and almost instant power as well, you never get used to it, and it's always surprising.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about it earlier, it's kind of like a roller coaster ride, and you feel your insides moving. Even though this isn't the fastest EV out there, it's still faster than 99% of gas cars out there. Like 5 seconds 0 to 60 is faster than anyone needs to go on a daily basis. So it's definitely going to be there for people who want to have some fun from time to time. But heck, my daily is a Prius, so I'm happy like with a 7.5 0 to 60 on the rear wheel drive.
Yeah, but yeah, that's the great thing with the electric thing is, you know, it doesn't get old. Like some people are like, yes, it's a one-trick pony, but it's still fun. Like the G's still always make an impression on you. It's still,
you can always rip it.
It's still, yeah, it's always exciting. And that's also going back to the gas thing, you know, it's like you have the instant power, so you're going to have a perfect launch every time. Which isn't guaranteed in a gas car, you know. So I mean, yeah, it's really fun. Of course, they do have the ends coming and stuff for people.
Oh, right. The high performance. Yep. You know, I think the battery packs are going to be similar in size. Of course, the range is going to go down with more performance tires and whatnot.
True.
But we look at the EV6, like, you know, mid 3, somewhere around there, 0 to 60.
Yeah.
Things, it's amazing what electrification can do with not a lot of extra engineering. Just look at bigger electric motor. Here we go.
Yeah. It's actually impressive though, because this whole day we've been driving around here, it's rated at 270 miles, but we started out the day that it was telling us over 300 miles of charge. And you know, as we've been driving here, it seems like we're getting about 3.2 miles per kilowatt hour. So it seems like it's averaging out to be pretty close to that 270 estimate in driving. But I mean, we have also been getting on it hard. We've been driving in rain all day and stuff.
Hills and going slightly uphill too to get to some parks and whatnot, like going up into the mountains a little bit.
So yeah, we're definitely draining the battery, I think, a little more. So the fact we're still basically looking like we're going to get out almost over 200 miles or 270 miles of range, I think it's, you know, it has a strong potential to overperform even if you don't get those small wheels. All right, so we don't have too many corners to try out here on this part of the drive, but what I can say over these you know, little bumps that we have here and some of the other cornering that we were experiencing earlier in the day is that it definitely feels nice and flat. I'm gonna have to again wait to push it on my local roads, but it feels very flat and stable, very reassuring and just confidence inspiring, and I don't know, I just feel like it feels very, very capable to me. And it's also, we're using this sound design right now, and it's this thing you can have it louder or quieter. This is actually the medium setting. There's even a louder setting that I feel like is like Hellcat levels of like volume. And so it's cool, but it feels like it's not really super connected to the gas pedal. And so it's like I hit the gas and it like kind of makes a little more noise, but then I'm completely off the gas and it's still making a bunch of noise. So it's I don't know, like usually other systems that do this kind of thing, it's directly related to your speed and your throttle input, and this isn't as much. Okay, well there it is. Now it's kind of
I think it's really there for continuous acceleration. I think we would be rewarded for that, but unfortunately we don't have like unlimited speed limits, you know. Right.
Yeah, but it feels good though otherwise. I mean, I really like some in sport mode again here, and the steering is nice and stiff, and these actually they're fairly weighty. These, for a fully loaded limited here, you're at 4,616 pounds. The lightest versions are just under 4,000 pounds, and then, you know, the all-wheel drive adds a couple hundred pounds, but so I mean they will vary by 600 pounds depending on how you set them up. But I mean, with the low center of gravity with the battery, you're running 245 wide Pirelli all-season the tires here, and they're the Nero tires, a little bit on the sportier side. But I mean, so the 245 wide, you know, gives you good meat, and a lot of other electric vehicles go skinnier, like the Mach-E goes skinnier, and so I mean, having
that range.
Yeah, so having good range and still 245 wide tires is really impressive, I think, from an
good balance.
Yeah, but yeah, so I'm not going to be able to play around with the rear bias of this system because none of these corners are tight enough to punch it out of a corner and you know, feel anything. But you do have torque vectoring, of course, with the all-wheel drive system, and so that's going to, you know, give this a dynamic feel as well. And so, yeah, overall though, I mean, I think it handles really well.
I have no issues with the performance of this car.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a nice improvement over the 5 too, because you're rewarded. Yes, the ride's a little stiffer, but you're rewarded with, you know, sharper handling, and I can certainly feel like I can toss this around more than the 5 with more confidence. The 5, it's like I can do it, and it's like, wow, this is crazy, they can do it. But this, it's like, I'm like low to the road, I can just tear it up and have total confidence.
This gives me a lot more confidence than the 5.
Also, as far as safety tech goes here in the IONIQ 6, you of course have all the usual Hyundai safety suite stuff as standard. So you have automatic emergency braking, blind spot monitoring is standard, all those, you know, typical things with rear cross traffic alert, all that does come standard on every IONIQ 6. Some of the stuff is reserved for the higher trims though, so if you want, like, there's a forward collision avoidance assist, so that will actually do evasive steering. If like someone comes over into your lane and you're not reacting, like, it can steer away automatically, and those types of advanced features are only here on these top trims. Also, the blind view monitor, the surround view cameras, all those things are also only on the Limited here. But otherwise, you know, I mean, a really good amount of safety tech. You also have a Highway Drive Assist 2.0 here in the SEL and the Limited. If you go for the base trim, then you only have Highway Drive Assist 1, so it's the older version of that system. And with the second generation here, it's going to give you the auto lane changes, but that still needs to have your hands on the wheel, and you have to be the one that does the lane change. It doesn't do it automatic, it just assists you with that. And it's kind of slow. I've tried it in, you know, the Genesis stuff, and it's like almost not even worth bothering with.
I don't bother with them, even in other manufacturers either.
I'm gonna have to wait till I get one of these back at home to really test it.
Too, yeah.
Because I've been frequently let down by the lane keep assist systems in Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis. So we'll see if this one's any different. So stay tuned, subscribe for that video if you want to, you know, see what that's like with a follow-up. But you know, still solid safety tech nonetheless. So the last two things I mentioned here about the IONIQ 6 are the range and efficiency numbers, and also the pricing and how it compares to the competitors. So first off, as far as range goes and the efficiency, so obviously your efficiency will vary depending on your climate, where you're driving, how you're driving. It is great though that these do have a heat pump, so they're going to be a little bit better in the wintertime compared to some of the other you know, competitors out there that might not have the heat pump. And the range and the estimates for all the efficiency stuff will vary depending on which trim, which wheels, all those different things. So I will list those on the screen there and have the breakdown of all the different ranges. But I mean, at the very worst, you get 270 miles of range. At the very best, 361 miles of range, which is very impressive for both metrics, honestly, for the amount of power you have. So I think efficiency is top notch. That really helps, especially having the focus of the great aerodynamics. They really wanted to maximize that efficiency. So I don't think anyone's going to be let down by the efficiency in these. But then the last thing to mention is that price. And so as far as the pricing goes, these start just under $43,000, including destination, for the base SE standard range, which gives you the smaller battery. It's only available in that base trim. And then if you go up beyond that, you know, the regular SE with the larger battery, which gives you that top 361 miles of range with the rear-wheel drive version, those are going to run you about 45 or so, and then they go up from there. And they're all pretty well equipped. Like I said, you have blind spot monitoring is standard, these screens are standard, you know, lots of good, you know, standard stuff. But you know, they do reserve, like I said, some of the core luxury features you're probably expecting at these higher price points for this limited version only. And so this one, fully loaded, is just over $57,000. And the limited is the only way you get a heated steering wheel. It's the only way you get ventilated seats. It's the only way you get a moonroof.
Bose? Is it the only way you get Bose as well?
Yeah, it's the only way you get the Bose as well. And so they really are locking you out of a lot of big things. I mean, things that you can get a heated steering wheel in a Sonata for not very much money. You can get a cooled seats, and
here's the thing, yeah, you can get all this tech in a Sonata hybrid and get 50 miles per gallon, and you'll save at least 10 grand. at least.
And so that's kind of one of the problems here with this. Now, it's I guess not fair to compare it to gas powered stuff, because of course you're paying the premium for the electric, and I'm assuming, prepared for the fact that you're paying a premium for the electric, and you might not make that up, with gas savings.
Right.
It is still kind of a luxury thing, and the installation of a level 2 charger is extra money. There's some costs associated with getting into an EV for sure. Yep. But whenever we are comparing it to other EVs, the main two competitors, really, there's only two. It's the Tesla Model 3 and the Polestar 2. And I would say for both of those, this has a good value component to it, because Polestar comparably equipped is going to be over 60 grand compared to this limited's 57.
Yeah. Those other two do provide higher levels of performance for the money.
That's really the one thing, is I think Tesla still has it beat. If you want fast performance, that 3.1 seconds 0 to 60 in the Model 3 Performance,
it's just silly.
For 55 grand, assuming you don't need autopilot or enhanced autopilot or the full self-driving thing that isn't full self-driving. If you're into that stuff, then you're going to be paying way more than these prices. But you can theoretically get a 3.1 seconds 0 to 60 Tesla for 55 grand or so. So I mean, that is, I think if you're an enthusiast, that still is going to call out to you more, but there's a lot of compromises there. The Tesla has no smartphone integration, you have none of the Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, you don't have the cooled seats like I mentioned, you don't have like gauges in front of you.
Yeah, you don't have
so many compromises.
Like common creature comforts are just not there.
Yeah. And so obviously it comes down to personal preferences and all that, but I think that this has some stuff that you don't get in the others, so that yes, maybe the performance isn't,
and you're not going to look like every other Tesla on the road. I think that's just like a big draw to this vehicle, is it stands out. I know people have been looking at this car, people say over and over it looks like a Porsche, and those are non-enthusiasts. Those are just common people we've ran into saying it. That has a lot going for it, and it's a crazy efficiency. Even if you're not using all the range all the time, over time, with the amount of dollars per kilowatt that you're spending, it just makes a lot of sense as well next to the competition. It's very efficient. I think that they've priced this pretty well. I think a lot of cars these days, especially the EVs, some of them are way too high with the price. I think this is, pretty spot on with where it needs to be. And they priced it pretty similar to where the EV6 is and the IONIQ 5, and those seem to be selling well, so why change it? So, and I guess that is the final thing, is, you do pay a premium for the sedan thing, because obviously the IONIQ 5 gives you, the panoramic roof, which this doesn't have. It gives you the heads-up display that this doesn't have. It gives you the extra practicality. So you're paying for the sporty thing here with the IONIQ 6 a bit. So, I'd say the 5 is probably still a slightly better value, probably. But, for someone who wants the sedan, again, there's very few to pick from. Very few sedans to pick from. Personally, I would be picking an IONIQ 5 over the IONIQ 6, but I'm happy Hyundai keeps, and Kia and all the Korean automakers are bringing out EVs like 2 to 3 a year. The clip is impressive. Yeah. So it's good to see them. I love the competition and the variety on the market that we're seeing here in 2023 already. Yeah, I know, it's great. So yeah, just great that this vehicle exists, and great that it's as good as it is. So anyway, but yeah, stay tuned for another full in-depth video on what it's like to live with one of these later this year, whenever these get into the press fleets. But anyway, thank you all very much for watching. Thanks, Kurt, for joining here on the video. Thanks for having me. Thanks to Hyundai as well for having us out here to Arizona to drive this. Let me know your thoughts on the IONIQ 6 in the comments below. Please also leave a like, comment, and subscribe to keep these videos coming. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.